All right. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to India Cloud Security Summit. It's been, to be honest, a bit of a challenge to set this up for everyone. I am one of the organizers, and it's been, um, let's say, quite laborious process for us to get this event up and running. So I would really appreciate if everyone can go ahead and give us your very constructive and concrete feedback, whether it's negative or positive, it doesn't matter, because we want to improve on this whole process of doing these events in the future. You can do it publicly on the Twitter, or send us a message on that handle specifically, or use the hashtag. We are monitoring that hashtag very carefully, and otherwise you can reach out to us as well via LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever channel you feel comfortable with at this point. So let's move on. Uh, we all know you can go ahead and win exciting prizes. At the end of the session, I will show one slide that will have the session code. It will not be shared in the chat window. And you will have to capture that code and submit the form. And we'll pick winners from there after the event is over at the end of the day. Okay. Um, and we are also supporting an NGO organization that's been running for 5 years at this point. Uh, so please see if you can go ahead and contribute anything. And once you do that, we'll be able to show you what contribution, what help your contribution has made. We'll be able to show you that as well once this is all over, and we'll run this hunger drive with the Youth of All Foundation, basically. So I strongly urge everyone to please see if you can, even a small amount makes a big difference. So please go ahead and donate if you can. About me, I'm an Azure MVP for the fourth year. Really very honored and humbled to be in this program in the first place. And I've been running a Microsoft user group here based out of Chandigarh, basically. That's where I live right now. And it's been a decent and an I would say amazing journey, where it's not just me imparting my knowledge or sharing my knowledge, but I've learned from community members alike as well. So if you want to get in touch with me, best way is just search for Jasjit Chopra on LinkedIn or Twitter. Those are the best mediums that you can reach out to me at any given point in time. Um, and today I'll be talking about uh, what the Microsoft Identity Platform means from an authentication perspective for beginners. And this is more geared towards developers. So in the chat window, can I have everyone type in and tell me whether they are a dev or an IT pro or an architect? Where do they stand? Like, are they on the admin side, dev side, or are they more on the architecture level? Because this is a very I want to set the expectations very clear as well. This session is a very beginners level session for developers who don't understand how the OAuth implementation and that whole implicit flow works. I'm going to talk about it, and it's not even a completely spoon feeding session. Um, so we will be even for admins, this is a good session to understand how this works at the end of the day, because at the end of the day, whatever your job role is, security becomes a part of everybody's job in today's IT industry, basically, right? So on a very basic and a very low level, I'll be starting, and some of the stuff you will see I'm repeating a lot. But if you have any questions in the middle, please go ahead and put them in the chat window. I'll be constantly monitoring that as well. Okay. All right. So let's get an introduction. I'm not sure if everybody is familiar with Azure AD, so I'm going to go ahead and give you a small, quick, brief introduction. I'm going to spend too much time on it. It's basically an identity and access management solution from Microsoft specifically, and it's used for inbuilt Microsoft services a lot. So if you basically buy Microsoft Office 365 or a business email solution and other, like if you're logging into SharePoint, whether you have an Azure subscription or not, it doesn't matter from that perspective. You actually are running off of an Azure AD identity platform if you're only in the cloud. Okay, so keep that in mind. And it works with third-party ones as well, as we saw in the previous session, if you were attending the Via session at all. And then it basically comes in 4 different flavors. One is the free version, then is the P1, then P2, and then you have the B2C. Now, I'm not going to explain in detail what these are, but basically the free version comes with some basic standard security postures that you can help safeguard yourself with. P1 has some enhanced security features. P2 again has more enhanced security features. And then B2C is more on the consumer side. So if you were to, for example, build an app like Uber or Zomato and you want I to maintain uh, authorization and authentication for your customers, you would use something like B2C, where it will allow you to federate logins using Facebook, Google, and other identity providers as well, basically, for that application, right? So you might have already seen some applications allow you to log in with Google or with Facebook. So Microsoft has that backend capability using Azure B2C. It's also called Azure External Identity, I think. So keep that in mind. That point will come in handy at a later stage when I'll be basically creating a custom application when I'll go into the demo part of this session. Okay. And I really want this to be a two-way session. So go ahead and start typing. Very few people have told me. I see few IT admins here, only one dev so far. So please, if you guys can let me know where you stand, that will be really helpful for me to understand, what my audience is and cater my session accordingly. So far looks like it's more admin, uh, mm, heavy session. So I'm gonna I actually prepared this more from a devs perspective, that there'll be more devs here, but that's fine. Uh, okay. Um, and if you're on the architect level, maybe I'm covering such basic level stuff that you already know about. So sorry if I'm repeating that. And this abbreviation is kind of important. The language or the lingo that we used, that we use in our day-to-day jobs, is also very important. So um, Azure Active Directory is usually referred to as AAD. Then there is local AD or Active Directory, which is an on-prem Windows Active Directory server that is available on the on-prem side from Microsoft. That is a different service offering. So you have an identity management system on your local infrastructure that you deploy, basically, and that comes with, like, it's a very complex product. I'm not going to go in detail about what Active Directory does. You have domain controllers and all that stuff. There are roles. There are different services that run off of it as well, like DNS and DHCP and other things that you can do there. But bottom line is, if you already have an Active Directory, you would sync those identities to the cloud. If you don't have it, great. Starting in cloud is the best option today. If any small businesses getting into this, everything in the cloud is a much better security posture, to be honest, and your management and operations are much more simpler to perform as well from a single management plane as well. And then let me click on the next. This concept of tenants is also very important. So when you become a customer of Microsoft, you actually in that sign up process, you are telling Microsoft what tenant you want to have, and this is a unique tenant ID basically that you get. There is a GUID attached to it in the backend as well, but the URL that you're looking at, the FQDN that you get for your tenant, is the actual domain that Microsoft uses for your identities, and then you can attach your custom domains on top of it. We're not going to talk about that right now. And these are of course unique. So let's say your company's name is company A. So you might in a very simple scenario say that I want company A dot on Microsoft.com as my domain. But there can be scenarios where your domain is already taken by someone else and it is not available for you to reuse because it's unique all over the world. And that is how Microsoft identifies you as a unique person in their multi-tenant Active Directory, Azure Active Directory service that is being offered. So you can actually create multiple tenants as well within the same subscription or service, but then it will have its own separate identity management platform completely. So there can be scenarios where you might use this, but again, I'm not talking about that. This session is more about how the developers can use or understand this OAuth process and use APIs and REST APIs and connect and get data, post data to different services at this point. Okay. Um, Now you want to really read about what Active Directory is all about. There is a link that is available to you. I'm going to go ahead and try my best to see if I can, you know, share all of these links. Can I do that right now? Sorry about that, guys. I should have kept these links handy with me. I'm going to try and copy these links and paste them in the chat window as much as possible. So we go along with this and you have some links to do it right away, because this presentation and the session might not be available at a later stage. I'm not too sure about that. Okay, so OAuth. Now, I don't know how much everybody understands this or not, but this is basically an authorization protocol at the end of the day. It is not an authentication protocol, which is very important to understand. And it is at the very least, it is designed to protect resources, and you're able to sign in and request those protected resources on behalf of a user. But there are other implicit flows available. Implicit flow is no longer used. It should not be used going forward. It's deprecated. But you can use OAuth protocol flow to get access to resources that are protected from a non-browser application like server-based or a device that can, poll certain endpoint that is protected and get authentication and access tokens and work from there. We're going to cover some very basic concepts over here, and the very important thing is access token. And access token is mostly used in, the most common format that is used is for JWT way, and I'm gonna show you practically what that JWT token actually means. We're gonna practically see how to create some REST API request using Graph API from a tenant to get data from SharePoint, basically. And we're gonna decode that JWT token, access token that we get, so you can have a better understanding of what is actually happening behind the scenes. Now, what I have here on the slide, the key takeaway is it's an authorization protocol. There are multiple ways to implement it. There are custom scenarios as well. So not every single person will implement it in the same manner, basically. So for example, Microsoft has its own way of implementing this whole OAuth process and the flow. And of course, there are standards that are defined. I'll show you where those standards are defined. There are links available. I'll share that with you as well. So if you really want to dig deep into OAuth specifically, you can read the specification documents. It's actually very, very well written, to be honest. It's not pretty to read, but that's a different scenario. You should. I strongly encourage everyone from an architect or an admin or a dev level that you should go ahead and read those documentation in depth and take out some time for it to actually understand what it does in the first place, and go from there. The biggest takeaway from this slide should be it's an authorization protocol. There are multiple ways to implement it. There is a particular interacting protocol flow that happens, and that flow can differ depending on the implementation scenario. And Microsoft, Okta, Auth 0, these are all identity providers. And then there are other service providers, like, for example, if you've heard of Zoho, or if you've heard of let me think of another one that is more common, Dropbox, right? So or Box, or other services that you're familiar with, they can actually integrate with mm, they have their own implementation of OAuth 2.0 one way or the other, so you can do automation work and use REST API to access data as well, right? So let's move on. the concept of OAuth roles is also this is a bit complicated because unless you practically follow through the whole process and do it multiple times, not just with Microsoft Identity System itself, but with others, and have that particular uh, scope and experience with, okay, how does OAuth work when Zoho implements it in their REST API? What about Microsoft with Azure AD or Graph API, for example? Then you might want to look into Dropbox maybe, or Box, or some other services that you have access to, and see if you can get to their documentation and get the API keys. SendGrid is another example, right? So until you work with multiple service providers and understand how they've implemented this, these roles will not make too much sense right now to you. So there is a resource owner that is responsible for granting whether you should be allowed or not in the first place. Then there is a resource server that actually um, you're trying to connect to. So for example, in our demo that we're going to cover, it's going to be the Microsoft SharePoint server, uh, which we are going to access through Graph. That will be our resource owner, and then client will be our Postman. We'll be using Postman to do this, and then the authorization server will be the Microsoft's identity platform, Azure AD, that will give us the actual access token in the first place, right? And then the way this protocol flow works is that you have a client. In our case, it'll be Postman. It basically makes an authorization request. There is a grant that is given to the client. With that grant, I can go to the authorization server and say, give me my access token. And then with that access token, I can go to the protected resource and get the data that I want, right? And then there are so many other advanced concepts that are available in terms of how does the refresh token works, what is the expiry, what are bearer tokens versus other types of tokens that are there. I'm not going to go in detail over there specifically. So, but I'm going to show you all the documentation that can help you with all of this. So let me go ahead and share my uh, other window where I had all of this open. Um, so the very first link that I have these links in my presentation. The very first link that I'm going to share with you is this Microsoft Identity Platform documentation itself, basically. So and the more important aspects within this documentation, I've already shared the link in the chat window. The other important aspect of this is the samples, basically. So you have, if you're a developer or even if you're an IT person and you want to do automation using PowerShell or anything, you'll find some sample scenarios over there. It has some samples using Python as well. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead. So these samples are really amazing if you want to understand all the different flows. And then there is the whole concept that is available to you in terms of, how that uh, uh, grant and the flow works. So the one that we are going to utilize right now is in our demo at a later stage. We are going to be using the client credentials flow specifically, and go through that and show you how it works at the end of the day. And I'm gonna try and see if I can quickly move to the quickly jump to the demo as soon as possible, and then let me go back to uh, OAuth documentation and tell you what that is. So this is another very big source of, you know, uh, uh, very big source of knowledge for me when I'm stuck or I'm not able to understand, or I have some issues with the OAuth implementation that I'm doing in some scenarios specifically. So I go to this documentation and get my concepts clear. So it is very important that you get your fundamentals right. Otherwise, it does become a bit of a nightmare in trying to troubleshoot something that you don't understand, right? So from here to getting started, what I want you to take away from this slide is look at the framework, look at the scopes that are available, especially the authorization code part, the client credential flow, and start with that. That will help you a lot in terms of understanding what these are. So even though this documentation looks a bit ugly, but you can see the way they've explained this, and I've depicted the very same in my presentation. It's no different. I actually picked it up from here. So if you want more detailed, plain level explanation of what is happening here and what these resource owners and these roles mean, you can read about them in the documentation as well. And you know, this is where the whole 9 yards and bread and butter is for understanding OAuth in the first place. Okay, so I would encourage everyone to go ahead and read this in much more detail. But as far as Azure AD is concerned and trying to get data from Graph API, I'm going to cover some scenarios and show you what the implementation scenarios are and their implications are when you select certain options when you're trying to set this up. Okay. All right. So let's move on to our PowerPoint slide. Uh, so again, this link is mentioned. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can go ahead and just share that link with you on the chat window so it's available to you in a very handy fashion. There you go. All right. Let's move back and voila, it's time for our demo. Let's move on. This is more interesting, right? We have to do I like doing more demo sessions than anything else. Okay, so this is something I've already prepared in the past for this session. I'm not going to look into all of this. I'm going to do something from scratch. I'm going to do a little bit of cheating here in terms of copying pasting the URLs specifically, but I don't know if all of you know this or not. And everything that I'm doing, by the way, I'm doing in a very temporary tenant. This will all get deleted. So there is a shortcut to getting to Azure Active Directory directly. So you can do aad.portal.azure.com instead of going to portal.azure.com and then going to Active Directory. You can actually directly go to this URL, which saves me one navigation step basically, and use this to log into Azure Active Directory. Again, the link is in the chat window. This will take you to your Active Directory, and if you already have an Office 365 account, you will see your tenant details over there and other information and your employees. So this is a Contoso demo tenant that I have set up over here. And let's go to the Azure Active Directory. And if you're trying to access something from a server-based solution, or you're trying to build a web application, or you're trying to access from a PowerShell, you're trying to get into Graph API, or from a Java application, the very first thing that you have to do is create an application in Azure AD and configure it in a proper way so you can do the development work in the first place. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go to app registrations, and I'm gonna go ahead and increase the zoom size so everybody can see this a little bit more better. All right, so this should be much more readable. So yeah, you can see I already have one application, and there's a warning here that something is expiring soon for certificate and secrets, because I only gave the validity of the secret that I created for this for 1 day, which is for today. Okay, just to keep things a little bit more simple and secure. So I'm going to create a new registration from scratch, and I'm going to show you everything. And this is where the crux of the ambiguity and the concepts and everybody gets really confused in terms of what are these all options all about, and what should I be worried about, and how should I go about this, right? So I'm going to create a new application registration, and I'm going to say ICSS demo 2 at this point. We already have one over there. Now, this is where the scope of this particular application starts from an Microsoft identity platform perspective. So we talked about tenants, we talked about multi-tenancy a little bit in the past, right? So there are 4 options that are available to you if you're creating an application, right? Are you creating that application to access resources within your organization? If yes, then you will select the first option that is there. And then if you are creating something that will work for other organizations as well. Like for example, you're an ISV, independent service vendor, or if you're trying to create an application that can be available for others to add in their Active Directory and be able to assign users to it. This is the option that you will select. Then there is the third option, wherein you can allow people to log into your app using an organization account or a personal live account as well from Microsoft. So you will use the third option in that scenario as a developer. And then the fourth option will be only for the Microsoft Live ID accounts. Now, if you have to understand this. If you want to implement a customer-based solution like you have from a consumer-based perspective, where they will have a username and password and everything, this is not the way to do it. You will use Azure B2C for that. That is completely different. This is for creating applications and making your application identity. You're federating your identity in these four scenarios basically. So either to your own tenant, either to your multiple tenants within Azure Active Directory. So consumers who already or businesses who already have Active Directory can come in to your app with their IDs, provided you enable them and they have granted the access, and you can go in and do certain operations, like for example, read their profile data and stuff like that. Guys, give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. Hey guys, I'm back. Sorry for the disruption. Okay, so where was I? Yeah, so four options, and basically there are scenarios where you can go in and read user profile data on another for other organizations tenant basically, but they have to add your app and grant you permission to do that. I'm going to show you how that API and grant permission setup works specifically, and go from there. Now, Microsoft has already created an app on the second option, which is any Azure Active Directory multi-tenant, and that is called Microsoft Graph Explorer. And for this tenant, I did not explicitly give it permission. I'll show you how that works. Basically, I'll log into that and show you once I create this particular application. So the third option is that you want to allow users to enter from a live ID perspective as well from Microsoft account. And when they do, a pop-up will come up, just like a pop-up comes up in your mobile phone that, hey, this app is requesting access to such resources. It will do the same thing where you define the scopes that, okay, I want to read your email address, I want to read your first name, last name, or date of birth, whatever data is there in your profile, it will basically attach it to a specific scope. And then that access token that you get in the end, the flow that we look at, that has the authorization saying that I am allowed to read this person's display name, basically. Okay, so the scope is well defined in that access token in a way. And how does that look like? Again, it's we'll look into it. So let's now focus our demo on the single tenant scenario, and this can be very well implemented in an automated way where you can go ahead and use this using PowerShell or Python or Java or anything that you want. And I'm going to just do a very simple operation where we're going to try and get data from SharePoint environment using Graph API. Okay. Does anybody have any question on this in terms of the account type that we are picking from when we are creating an app, basically? So this app going forward will act as an identity for Microsoft to say, oh, okay, you're coming with this ID. I know who you are, and I know you have been created to access account only in this organization specifically. And you will have certain permissions and all the other configuration. We're going to jump into it next. All right.
Jasjit,
Yeah.
how the third option is different from fourth option?
Okay, so third option is only Microsoft Live ID, only Microsoft personal account. The third option is both. You can allow org and personal IDs in your application. So it's just giving you one granular level where you can, if you want to implement your application to only accept live IDs and don't manage their account, then use that. If I'm building a consumer facing app, I will not go here. I will actually go in B2C and allow them to log in with Microsoft Live ID instead, you know? So that's where this is a little bit different. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and click on register. Let's ignore this redirect URI. This is a little bit of an advanced concept. As I said, we are going to very basically focus on the very basic stuff. This is not any, this is a very level 100 kind of a session. If you're building a React app, if you're doing local development work and you're running a web server, you will actually put localhost 8000, localhost whatever, and do that. And there is for that level of web development, there is something called MSAL that is available. If uh, Microsoft Authentication Library. So go ahead and look into this. Now this is specifically for .NET, but there is documentation that is available for MSAL from Microsoft for every other. Like for example, for React, for Angular, for example, you can see here it's available for Angular. I can search for MSAL React. You will see it'll give you that basically. So go ahead and read about the libraries that are available. So if you're using Python, you might find a Python library here. I'm not too sure. I've never used it, but those are the libraries that you will use. And whatever the local server port number or the host, the URL that your application will run on while you're developing it, or if you're directly deploying it on a dev server or a stage or a production server, those redirect URIs will have to go here because there is an implicit handshake that happens when you do that. So let's go back to our Azure AD register, and I'm going to leave this as is for now. But here is where you can, define how your app is going to behave. Are you creating a mobile app? Are you creating a single page application? Like for example, most of the React apps are single page applications, or you are doing a web-based, traditional web-based application where people will come in and log in and have different scopes and roles defined as well. You can handle that and create custom scopes and custom roles as well at a later stage. So let's go ahead and register this. Very simple. Came in here, gave the name, selected the first option and clicked register. Simple step. Nothing fancy about this one, right? Now this is where it also gets a little bit more confusing for everyone. What is all of this? And what is happening? Microsoft is already telling you that we are getting rid of, Azure Active Directory ADAL library. So if you have applications that were using this legacy library, you need to get rid of it and use MSAL going forward. I'm just going to ignore this and click on this. Now, Microsoft has included something called Integration Assistant. It's great that Microsoft is trying to simplify this complex process, but I'm not going to go through that at this stage, at least, because for a developer, this can be a very easy way of you to understand how you can configure and do the integration steps. But let's before we go there, let's understand some very basic concepts and do a practical demo and go from there. So what am I really bothered about? I'm bothered about my application identity, client ID. So this is what my client ID will be there, but there is no client secret that is available. So the client credential flow that we are going to use, it requires two things. It requires client ID and it requires a client secret as well. So if I look at the left-hand navigation, I have options for overview. I have a quick start option over here, which will give you, simple options where you can click on it and it will take you to the documentation to go through it. Then you have branding. You can brand and create a logo for your application, a homepage for your application. So if you've published this app for other orgs to use, you should have all of this filled out properly if you're an independent service vendor or if you have your own product that integrates with other Azure B2B tenants, right? Then you can have your authentication platforms configured over here. Again, for now, we don't need to worry about anything at this stage. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. So here I can add a certificate. that can be used, and I can rotate that certificate. I can, in fact, keep that certificate in Azure Key Vault as well. That's another level of security. We're not going to talk about that in this call, but that is possible. But the best practices, Microsoft would say, if you are giving access to a very secure resource, you should create a certificate-based authentication and rotate that certificate on a at least if possible a yearly basis, but the best practice is 3 months. You should every 3 months rotate that certificate and do that, because if that secret gets leaked, every 3 months it'll get rotated one way or the other, right? So let's go ahead and create a secret right now. We're going to keep it a little bit more simpler because the flow for certificate is a little bit more complex. So I'm going to say this, that this is for ICSS demo 2. I'm going to do a custom one. I'm going to say start it on 28. So this is where you saw that warning. I'm going to end it on 29th. I don't need it for more than a day because this is just for this demo that I'm doing right now. I'm going to create that client secret. And this is the actual value that is there. I'm going to copy it and keep it in the clipboard for now, and leave this screen as is over here. Um, and let's go ahead and hop on to Postman. And before we do that, I'm gonna quickly switch gears here and show you Microsoft Graph Explorer. So Microsoft Graph has been published as an app which works on different tenants. It has its own identity from Microsoft in the first place. So let's go ahead and open this. Where is the direct link for Graph Explorer? Come on, there it is, right? So I actually did not log into this specifically. So I wanted to show you the exact yes, you can store the secret in Key Vault, Samir. That is the best practice too, actually, and the certificate. So you can store this, and then there will be another flow where you have to first go to the Azure Key Vault, get the secret, and then make the get the access token, and then get the Graph API, basically. So as you can see here, I have opened up Graph Explorer. It's automatically picking up my dark mode over here, and you see, you are currently using a sample account. Sign in to access your own data. Now, if I sign into Graph Explorer, see what will happen. Uh, Even though Microsoft has already created this application, it's one single application. Microsoft Graph Explorer is the name of the application. If I click on and sign in, it will not let me in until and unless I give it permission. See, this is the application that Microsoft has created on its own using the second option. And it is using Graph Explorer. I think it's not second option. Microsoft has used the third option because the Graph Explorer works with personal identity as well. So don't take my word for that one specifically. And then it is saying, okay, do I want to grant this permission as a single user, or do I want to do it for the whole organization? So once granted, my whole organization can use this app and make requests. So this pop-up will not come for other users, basically. That there are other scenarios where it will still pop up depending on the level of access. So right now it is only asking me to request permission for doing this, that okay, I want to read your profile, and they want to maintain access to the data that have been given to you. Okay, so I'm gonna call and say that okay, I'm gonna consent on behalf of my organization and accept it. That's it. I've only consented to read my profile at this point. So if I run this particular API request and say run, which is graph.microsoft.com/me, I get the data that, okay, I am Megan Brown. This is my job title. This is my email address. This is my office location. All of this data is available to me at this point. Nix, that is not the right way. We are going to share the session code at the end of the session. It will not be pasted in the chat window. You will see it in the last slide. Please have some patience. Follow the process. All right. So uh, uh, we got the data from this specifically. Now see what will happen when I go ahead and do this. I go to sites, basically, or SharePoint list. Actually not list, SharePoint sites, and I say give me my organization's default site. So this is graph.api and it is giving me that data specifically over here, and then enumerate subsites of this. Access denied. This is what I was looking to. So as a user, I had the rights to read the default. Uh, that just an example of auth code flow. I'm not. Is that a question or is that a statement, Rahul? I'm not clear. Uh, uh, Basically, so I'm just trying to explain what is happening here, because at the beginning, when this Graph Explorer application asked for consent, it only consented for a specific scope that we are doing. So I'm talking about what scoping means in OAuth at this point. Now, where is it set up in the first place, right? If I want to pre-grant this particular Graph Explorer with additional capabilities or not, I can show you. I can show you that as well. So let's go back to our demo application right now, and I'm going to duplicate this tab really quick. Okay, and you will see Graph Explorer application listed in that application list at this point. So let's wait till it opens up. Come on. And I go to dashboard, Active Directory, app registrations, and all applications. Graph. There you go. So now it is listed, and I can see here if I go to the API permission section of this particular application, permissions, you can see these are the permissions that are allowed to it, and whether or not you want to grant admin consent for it or not. Right now, for my custom application, I want to do much more. Right. So let me go back to app registrations and search for that one, and go to app API permission specifically. It already has user read profile, but before we go there, let's go ahead and start configuring our flow in the graph in the Postman specifically. So I'm going to create another workspace and call it ICSS demo 2. And let's create a new HTTP request. And let's copy this. So the first HTTP request that we are going to create is going to be a post request for login.microsoftonline.com. This is my tenant ID. Then OAuth 2.0 version 2 token endpoint, basically. So I'm trying to get the access token, right? But before I get the access token, I need to provide it a bunch of details that will make this happen in the first place, right? Now, instead of this, where am I getting this GUID from? I can go to that application itself and go to the overview. Over here, I see my directory tenant ID. I can get it from here. That's one way of getting it if you are within the app window itself, or I can go to Azure Active Directory and look at the overview. I'll get the tenant ID from there as well. So I'm telling at this point, there will be a different endpoint for the Graph Explorer because it's multi-tenant based. Here, the endpoint is specifically going to get it from my tenant specifically. So just keep that in mind. And then I'm going to present a bunch of key pair values that I'm going to send the data as and get that from there. So I'm going to get my client ID basically. Let me go ahead and save this as well, and save this in save this to my demo 2 session over here. So this is getting our access token basically. I can rename this if I want. Get access token. And I'm using the web-based version of Postman, by the way. You can sign up and use this as well. And I absolutely love this application. Let's go ahead and add the client ID, and then we're going to get the client secret that we created over there. And then we are going to get the grant type. Again, we looked at the different types of grants available. One of them is the client credential flow that I shared the documentation earlier with you. We're going to use that. And then the scope, basically. Now, here you have to understand the scope is a little bit different. We are scoping it to graph, and then at a later stage in graph, we are going to define what permissions does that graph API endpoint has for the user or for that particular application, not user basically, for that particular application. So I'm going to copy these client credentials. And then now the client ID will be different here. The client ID in this case will be for this second application. So let's go to overview and copy that particular client ID over here. I'm gonna go there, and then the client secret. Of course, I created a secret beforehand, and I think I messed it up. I'm not sure. Yeah. So once you create a secret, you cannot get it back. So I'll have to create another one really quick. That is why I wanted to keep that open. All right, let's copy this secret really quick. And it's a good practice or a best practice to make sure you rotate your secrets at a given point in time, so they don't become stale. So this is done. So now if I go ahead and run this, I should be able to get an access token from this request, basically. Okay, it says invalid request. Great. I am doing something wrong here. Client credentials. Give me 1 second. Okay, all right. So let's look at the error detail and understand what this is. Grant type. What did I mess up here? V2 OAuth token, V2 OAuth token. Okay. Can anybody tell me what mistake am I doing? I caught my mistake.
It's in the parameters. Actually, it should be in the body section.
Exactly. So see, even though you can pass in so many different OAuth sessions or OAuth implementation, you can pass quite a lot of stuff in the parameters itself. But that's not the best way. That's not the best practice either. Some will work, some will not work. But if your queries get intercepted, you will have issues from a security standpoint. So this is where I was supposed to enter my data, not in the parameters. That is why it's causing that mess for me right now. So it is expecting the grant type in the body, not in the parameter, the way this application works. So let's go ahead and do that. I've seen implementation from other service providers where parameters will also work, but again, it depends on everybody's implementation of how they expect the data, how they don't expect the data as well. Um, mm, Not every key type will work in parameters. So keep that in mind as well. So let's very quickly go ahead and copy these values and paste them. And good job. I couldn't get your name who spoke there, but a very
Susan.
okay, awesome. You've worked with this before, I'm guessing, with Postman.
No.
All right, there you go. So we have our access token. Now, how do we make sense of our access token? There is this website called jwt.io, and you can actually decode your access token from here specifically. So let's see and let's do that. This is what I find really very interesting. Let's copy this, paste this over here, and this is our decoded token. Now this is the actual JW access token looks gibberish to everyone, which is the way it is intended to. But here you will see everything that is available within the header of that particular token, the payload data that it has, and you can see the display name, the app ID, All the details are available within this specifically. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna share this link with you guys as well. Sometimes, when you're doing dev work, you actually need to look into the payload data to understand what actually access token is getting, and sometimes the access denied is not, you know, it's still not. You're not able to troubleshoot it, because with this access token, what you're able to do further with the graph query, it becomes a bit of an issue. All right. So I'm going to take this access token and create another request to get the root sites of SharePoint, basically. So I'm going to copy this URL really quick and create another HTTP request. This time it will be just a GET request. And in this case, I'm going to let me save this and say get sp root site list. So it will list all the SharePoint lists that are available in the SharePoint root site, basically. And I'll show you what that looks like as well. So I'm gonna very quickly open my root SharePoint site for this tenant that I have and show you the site content so we can see some of the data come up in the JSON that we receive. So let's go to SharePoint really quick. And at this stage, if I run this, so I'm going to go here, go to authorization, do a bearer token. That was a bearer token. Copy that. I can say inherit from parent as well, but I'm just going to explicitly define that token. Copy this really quick. It is still actually at this stage should be giving me an access denied. Can anyone tell me why? I'm trying to get data for the SharePoint root list. It is still going to give me an access denied. So let me go to the root site really quick. There you go. Anyone has any idea, or can anyone make a guess why it will still give me an access denied?
Because we didn't specify the scope.
Exactly. Where did we not specify the scope?
On the app registrations under the API.
Yes, exactly. So see, if I run this at this stage and do this, it'll tell me access denied. Either SCP or role claim need to be present in the token, which is not there. So if I go back to my JSON token, that particular scope is not there. So let's go ahead and add that basically. So I'm going to go back to my application, go to API permission, and give and add a permission to this. And I'm going to add the permission to the graph API specifically. And I don't want delegated permission right now, because delegated means on behalf of the user. So everything that user has access to, that API can go ahead and do and do that. This kind of flow for delegated user is used for web-based application where you want your application to work in the context of the user permission itself. But I'm going to go and use application permission at this point, and I'm going to search for site permission. Open this, and let's give it site read for now. And this is really cool, guys. Before, Microsoft did not have this option, so there was a bit of a security concern with, when I work with multiple big clients. I have to get my architecture reviewed by the architecture board and security board, so they approve the integration scenarios and the overall architecture of my customizations that I'm trying to make. They don't approve this very easily, because they're like, oh, you're giving access to this API even though you only want data from one SharePoint site. You're giving access to my whole SharePoint environment. That's a big risk for them no matter what. So I'm going to go with this right now. But now Microsoft, this I think came in February this year, so you can actually do selected sites and give that specific site access. You can read the documentation of that. I'm going to add this permission. And before I do this now, see, with the Graph Explorer, there was a consent on, and I applied it. But because I am doing it from a Postman, there is no UI for that uh, prompt to come in, or that particular flow to happen at this point. I'm going to just go ahead and grant admin consent for the Contoso and apply it over here as well. So from the backend on this application, because I'm creating it for my custom tenant right now, I can do this and do this grant. So it is available. Now, if I go here, it will again say access denied. Why? Anyone? I already gave it permission, but the access is still denied.
Your access token is invalidated. You need to have a new access token.
Exactly. Good point, Rahul. Somebody's paying attention. So I need to run this command again because now that particular application that is created over there in the backend has new scope. So let's just keep this in mind. I am going to take a screenshot of this really quick, or actually not a screenshot. Let's do this. Let's put this on the left. Let's duplicate this tab, take it out. I'm going to put this on the right, and we're going to compare the tokens and see what happens here. Okay. So, all right. Let's go back here and get our token. This is our new token now. I'm going to copy this token. Copy this token. Go to the second point. Go to authorization. I could have used default stuff, but I want to show you where this authorization token and stuff works specifically. And now I'm going to run this command, and voila, I get all the lists that are available. And if you want to see the content, for example, one of the list is events, right? So let's see if I have that over here in that results specifically. See, shared documents. There you go. I have my list over here. This is the one. So it is actually coming from that root SharePoint list. Now let's go back to our JWT token, paste it over here specifically. And you can see there is a bigger payload data this time, right? Than here, you have more lines here. What is it that stands out? Again, I'll have to probably zoom in a little bit more. So now you can see now my access token has a specific role that is absent from here. Does this make sense? So again, this was, I think we are almost on the top of the hour for this presentation. I guess this was helpful and clarified some of the doubts and getting started. This is not that difficult to work with. All this is very simple if you put your head to it and understand what this is all about. So hopefully this was hopefully this gave you a little bit more details in terms of what you already know. And some devs they when they look at this flow and they're like, holy shit, this is really complicated and stuff. No, it's not. Just go to the documentation of whatever identity platform you're working with. Understand first the access token flow, that is separate. Then after the access token flow, you can go and take that access token and go to the secured resource and get your data from there. Yeah, I'm afraid we are running out of time and don't have questions and answers time, but I'll still stick around on this session. If anybody has questions, go ahead and shoot them. These are reference links, additional reference links that I have. And if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat window. A very big thank you for the sponsors. And this is our session code. It's 47899 for this one. Those of you who are looking for it. And yeah, the next section is secure your data, all about Power Platform data loss prevention. This is from Jenkins. He's an office development MVP. And I'll go back to my question slides. So I'll stick around if you guys want to ask any further questions. I'm here for another couple of minutes. Otherwise, thank you so much for attending my session today. And please give us your feedback. And if you can tweet, that'll be great as well. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.